Hello everyone, welcome back. In my last video, I showed you how I performed the CLV for a digital media store. Today I'm going to continue with that series and show you how I performed the customer segmentation. Customer segmentation involves categorizing customers based on three key factors: the recency, the frequency, and the monetary value. Recency refers to how recently a customer has made a purchase. Customers who purchased recently are often more engaged and more responsive. Now, if we look at frequency, frequency refers to how often a customer makes a purchase within a specific period. That's how many times did they buy from the media store. A high frequency means that the customer is loyal, while a low frequency could mean that the customer is hibernating or the business is losing the customer. Monetary value measures the total spending of a customer. So it looks at the cumulative revenue generated by each customer. A high monetary value means that the customer is more valuable to the business. Now let's go over to the queries. The first table that we're going to look at is the frequency table. And in the frequency table, I used a CTE to create what I called the purchase frequency table, which is a temporary table. So in the last video, I explained what a CTE means. I used, like I said, a CTE to create a table called purchase frequency, which is a temporary table. And this table simply, what I did was to extract the customer ID and the invoice ID from the artist albums sales table. This is the artist album sales table, which is a table that I extracted earlier on in this series. So the artist album table contains all the information that I need for my to calculate my frequency. So there I picked the customer ID. For the artist album, I gave it an alias which is AR. So that's why you see AR in front, AR dot, to pick the customer ID and then the invoice ID. So the invoice ID here is the transaction ID. So the invoice ID, count distinct means that it's going to count the distinct number of times that the customer bought from the company. So we just want to know the frequency. How many times did they go to the website to buy from that store? We don't want to know if perhaps in one invoice they bought more than one item. All we want to know is how many times did they go to buy? Is it 10 times? Is it 7 times? Is it 5 times? That's all we are interested in. So this will pick from also from the artist album sales table and we'll call it frequency. So now that we've created the temporary table called purchase frequency, it's time to create the frequency table. So now for the frequency table, all I do is just to pick the customer ID, the first name and the last name of the customer, all from the customers table. So this is the customers table. This is a customers table, and it contains the first name, the last name, and the customer ID, which is what we pick from here. And then we concatenate the first name and the last name because we want them to appear together. So we concatenate the first name and last name and leave a space in between and call it customer name. And then the frequency that we already calculated here, we just bring it down. So you remember that this table is called purchase frequency. So what I did was to give it the alias PF, so that to call it, I put PF dot the frequency to bring it into my frequency table. So here we have two tables, don't be confused. The frequency table and then the temporary table. The frequency table is the permanent table. I didn't highlight it here because I already created the table. The table is already here. So the frequency table and then the purchase frequency table, which is the temporary table. So ordered it by frequency in descending. That means we want to see the highest number first. So if we run this, is what we get this table down here. So you can see the customer ID for each customer. Bunch Hansen is written together even though it was separated before. So we have a space in between, which is the rule of the concatenation that we did up here. And then this is the frequency. That means that this particular customer bought from the business 7 times within the period that we are looking at. The same thing for Dan Peters, bought 7 times within the period that we're looking at. So the next variable we want to look at is the recency. To calculate the recency, I also used a CTE. This is the CTE called last purchase. So what this CTE is doing is that it picks the invoice date for each transaction, and it's not just the invoice date, the maximum is indicated the last time that the customer bought from the business. So that is picking the last date that the customer bought for each of the customers, and I called it last purchase date. So this is the first table that was created. It's created simply to calculate the last, or to extract, simply to extract the last purchase date for each of the customers. Now, the next table created is the recency calculation table. So here we've already calculated the last purchase date, which is this, and it's in the last purchase temporary table. So what I did is to bring this table here. First, I need to get the customer ID and the customer first name. So they see just first name and the last name. We concatenate them together with a space in between and call it customer name. And then I left join it with the last purchase, which is the table we created up there, the temporary table, and call that LP. So the last purchase, I called the last purchase LP does the last purchase date, which is what we have here. But we cannot put it straight into our recency calculation. We need to break it down into days, and that is what the JULIANDAY function is doing for us. The JULIANDAY function now breaks down the date into, numbers. So it breaks down into numbers. So that means this particular line of query is saying that break the last purchase date up to date, that's up to now, into days. Calculate the difference between the two, the difference between the last time the customer purchased and now, and break it into days, into numbers. So these numbers now round it up to 2 decimal. That's what the round is doing. So the round function is saying once you have done this, you have broken the difference, you have found the difference between the last purchase date and now, and you have broken it into numbers. If it's in decimal, round it to just 2 decimal places and call it recency. So that's what this line did for me. So here I found the recency from the last purchase date that I extracted up here in the last purchase table, and I I I um I I broke it down into numbers, into number of days, and rounded it down to 2 decimals, and that's what we have here. So this is all we needed to do to find the recency. So it's left joined to this on customer ID to customer ID. Remember that this table contains customer ID. The customer table also contains customer ID. So that's what we use to join the two tables. And then group by the customer ID, the first name, last name, and the last purchase date. Now we order by recency. So now let's look at the monetary value. So for monetary as well, I created a CTE called customer monetary. So for here, what I did was to call the the artist album from the artist album table called AR. I called the customer ID again, and then the total amount. That's the amount spent by each customer. Remember that in the artist album, in the first video in this series, In the artist album, I calculated the unit price and the quantity to find the total amount for each transaction. So here we're saying that group by the customer ID. For each customer, I want you to add up every transaction that they've done and give me the total monetary value for all their transactions. So that means that if a customer, as we found in the recent frequency table, if a customer buys 7 times, add up all that they spent those times. That's each that add up every time, everything they spent all those 7 times, add them up together and give me the total value. That is what I want. I don't want the individual values for each transaction. I want the total values. So this round is just to ensure that it is rounded to 2 decimal places. So we're having the sum of all the purchases that the customers made made in the company, add up everything and give me the total value for each customer and call it total monetary. So once we've calculated this in the temporary table, I now come here, pick the customer ID from the customers table, pick the first name and last name. Again, I concatenate to customer name. And then this function, the COALESCE function, is saying that look at the total monetary, which we are left joining to the customers table. That's this one. The total monetary in the customer monetary table called CM. I want you to look at the table, and if there's a null anywhere, replace that null with 0. So and call it monetary. So that's how we got the monetary value. So call it monetary and now arrange in descending order. Of course, these two tables are joined on customer ID and grouped by first name, just for it to be distinct values on customer ID, first name and last name. So that's the for the monetary value. So that for each table, for frequency, we have the frequency, the recency, so that if we run this, it creates the monetary value, which is the customer ID, customer name, and the monetary. So if I take this out and run the table, we have the values here. So we say it should arrange in descending order. That means the highest number is going to be placed at the top and the lowest number will be at the bottom. So that's the calculation for the monetary value. Now we're going to the RFM table. So this table, what it does is to simply put all the things we've calculated, the frequency, the recency, and the monetary, put everything together in one table. So here we're creating the RFM table, and we're going to select from all the three tables. The recency calculation, we're selecting the customer ID, customer name. We know that we calculated the customer ID and customer name. I mean, we have the customer ID and customer name in all the three tables. So we only need to pick it from one. So I'm picking from the recency table, the customer ID, the customer name, then the recency value. And then from the frequency, left join to the frequency table. The frequency table has the frequency in it, so we're picking that, while the monetary calculation table has the monetary value, so we pick that as well. So all the tables are joined on customer ID, and we're ordering the recency, we're ordering in ascending order because the lower the number, the better. That means that the customer was more recent, they bought more recently. Then for frequency, it's in descending order because the higher the number, the better. I mean, somebody that bought 7 times is better than somebody that bought 6 times or somebody that bought 5 times. So the higher the number, the better the frequency score. And then for monetary also, the higher the number, the better. So that means that people that bought more, that they have a higher monetary value, are arranged at the top, while the ones with the least monetary value are arranged at the bottom. So that's how we create this table, and it is called the RFM table: customer ID, customer name, recency, frequency, and monetary. So that if I remove this and run the table, So we have our table here. So as explained, this customer has a recency of 3597. That means they bought more recently, and their frequency score is 6, and their monetary value is 40.67. So that's how it is arranged. So what it has done here is that it arranged on the recency score first, and then went to the next condition, which is descending order. So it picks the one with the higher recency, I mean frequency after the recency, next the one with the higher monetary value. So the next thing is the ranked RFM. So from here, we're going to break each of those values. We're going to break them into 5. So I'm using the NTILE function to break each value into 5 different bins. So what I'm saying is, for each customer in the recency table, we know that we arrange the recency table in ascending order. So that's from the least to the highest. So now pick these numbers, all the numbers in the recency table, split it into 5 bins. And I want the bins with the lower numbers at the top. So that means the bin with the lower numbers at the top will be bin 1. Next, it will be followed by bin 2, bin 3, and bin 4. So we're going to name this new column the recency score column. Now, for frequency, I want you to arrange the table in descending order. So that means from the highest to the lowest, the highest number to the lowest number. So for the highest number, call it the first bin, followed by the next set of numbers, call that bin 2, then followed by bin 3, bin 4, and bin 5. That means bin 1 will contain frequency scores that are the highest, while bin 5 will contain frequency scores that are the lowest. So create this new table and call it frequency score table. That's for frequency. Now for monetary, follows the same logic as frequency. I'm saying create a new table where the monetary value that we already found, that we already got, arrange that table in descending order. Now split that table into 5 bins, such that the bin 1 will be monetary values that are the highest, while bin 5 will be the bin that contains monetary values that are the lowest. So now arrange it in that order and place it in the monetary score column. So of course, all this we took from the RFM table where we calculated everything individually. So now put all this in new columns: the recency score, the frequency score, and the monetary score. So after we've created all our scores in the ranked RFM table, which is a temporary table, like I said earlier, we will now go down here to put everything together into one table. So now we're saying that we're going to select the customer ID, customer name, and now we select the recency score, the frequency score, and the monetary score, all this, and put it in our new table, which is the RFM score table. So that's what we are doing here in this set of queries. So this is customer ID, customer name, frequency score, recency score, and monetary score. Of course, we are picking them all from the ranked RFM table. So if we run that, this is not supposed to be there. Okay. So if we run that, we have our RFM scores table. So which is this? So we'll see the customer ID, customer name, recency score, frequency score, and monetary score. So if I remove that so that we can see the table. So we can see all our scores: recency, frequency, monetary. So this is what we will now use to create the segments. So now let's go to the next table, the customer segment table, which is where the segments are created. So in the customer segment table, we can see this is the name of the table, customer segment. So we're selecting everything from the RFM scores table that we just created. So we'll select the customer ID, customer name, the recency, frequency, and monetary scores. And now we create the condition. So the conditions that I created was this. If the recency score is 1, the frequency score is 1, and the monetary score is 1, that's the best customer. That's the best kind of customer, because that means that a recency score of 1 means that the customer purchased more recently, because you know the lower numbers are at the top ascending. So more recently. So the bin 1 contains customers that bought more recently. If we look at the frequency score also, we arrange in descending order. That means that the customers that bought more frequently are in bin 1. So that means that's the best kind of customer we want. Some customer that purchased the highest number of times. And then if we look at the monetary score, also arranged in descending, that means that all the customers that have the highest monetary purchases, that's they bought the highest, the amount they bought was the highest, are in the top, that's descending. The highest numbers are at the top in bin 1. So of course we want customers that are, buying a lot from us to be in, to be, they are the best kind of customers. So a customer that buys often, that buys that bought more recently, that buys often, and that made the highest highest purchases in terms of monetary value, will be the best customer. Now for the second one, we say the customers that have the recency score that is less than or equal to 3, and frequency score of less than or equal to 3, that's between 2 and 3, between 2 and 3, and monetary value between 2 and 3, are loyal customers, which is because their scores are relatively okay. And then for customers that have recency score of less than or equal to 2, that's between 1 and 2, which is high. Which is the best. It's not the highest there, which is low, but the best. And frequency score of greater than or equal to 4. That means their frequency, they didn't buy as much or as often. They didn't buy as often. And that's between 4 and 5. 5 is the highest. So that means these ones are low numbers, because they didn't buy as much as often, and they didn't buy as much. The monetary score is low. So these ones are new customers, because this is high. That means they bought more recently, but these are low. So it's an indication that they are probably new customers. And then for customers that have a recency score of greater than or equal to 4, that means it's been a while that they bought. These customers patronized us. They didn't patronize us recently. It is a while that they bought, but their frequency score is high. That means they bought when they were buying from us. They were consistent. Their frequency was high. They were buying often, and when they were buying from us, their monetary score was also high. That's between 1 and 2, which is high. That means they were spending a lot of money when they were buying. So these customers are at risk, because their recency, the last time they bought, has been a while, but the other scores are high. So they are at risk of being lost as customers. Now, the last category is the hibernating. These ones, their recency score is not good, because the last time they bought has been a while. Their frequency score is also not so good, because they've not bought as often as they used to. And then the monetary value is also low. That means that they've not spent so much money. So this is an indication that these customers are hibernating. So for any other condition outside of this, we call them loyal customers. So that's how I created the segment. So this is the case statement creates a conditional statement. is like your if else. That's what this case statement does. So it has created the segments. Now, all the segments, we call them segments. So said create all the segments and put them in the segment column. So of course we got all the scores from the RFM scores table. So now if we run this, we create the table. But if I take this out, this is the table, the customer segmentation. So this is the table, the customer ID, the name, the recency score, frequency score, monetary score, and then the segments. So if we run this now so that we can see our table. So this is the customer name, this is the recency score, the frequency score, and the monetary score. So this is a loyal customer. This is 155 is new customers. That means this one they bought more recently, but not as often and not have not spent as much. So these are new customers. These ones are they bought more recently, they bought often, but their monetary score is low. They are still loyal customers. These are they bought recently, they've bought often, and their monetary score is high. That means they've spent, a considerably good amount of money in the company. So they are called also loyal customers and on. So now that we've created the segment, we're going to now download the file and then take it to Power BI. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how I created the market baskets. After which we'll now go into Power BI to create our visualizations. So thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of the videos. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you again very soon.